Welcome to Inspired Edinburgh, powerful conversations helping you reconnect with your purpose. I'm Elliot Reeves, and my guest today is Lucy Rose Walker. Lucy Rose is the co-founder and CEO of Entrepreneurial Spark, the world's largest free business accelerator for early stage and growing ventures. And your vision is to inspire and enable positive change through the action of entrepreneuring. In 2016, you were listed on SBNN's 40 Under 40 list, and you've helped grow Entrepreneurial Spark from one hatchery with 25 Chiclets to soon-to-be 13 hatcheries across the UK with over 800. Lucy Rose, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Great. So it would be great if you could start by telling us a bit about your background and I suppose really who Lucy Rose Walker is.
Okay, great. So I started out probably quite young in the entrepreneurship space, which is something I've only just reflected on quite recently.
Okay.
I trained when I was 16. I was working as a childminder.
Right.
Just in the kind of summer holidays and things, and I never really thought about it at the time, but I was always kind of babysitting and doing those things that you do when you're kind of that age, but I suppose always working really. When I went to uni I studied psychology, and because I always had a real fascination of people. So that for me was kind of, I would find out more about people. The reality of studying psychology is you learn a little about a lot, and so you kind of get this overview. It maybe wasn't quite what I'd hoped for it, but it was a great experience anyway, that's for sure. So I did that, and during that period as well, I worked again in a startup during one of the summers there. And I worked for an e-commerce company during the dot-com period, not long before it went bust.
Okay.
But again, a really interesting experience for me in terms of working in that environment. I knew that was kind of where I really wanted to be. So came out of university, by which point the chap who I'd originally worked with started a new venture. Interestingly, it was a venture that had come about through a group of people from Archangels who'd come up with their own idea. And we joked a few years later about the fact that angels should probably stick to investing in other people's ideas rather than coming up with their own, because it probably wasn't the best idea in the world, albeit it gave me the opportunity to travel the US. So we took a Tartan credit card out to the US, and the market was the Scottish diaspora. So across the US there's this desire to have a history and a heritage, so they really want to have a connection, and a lot of that stems from Scotland. So this was about how do we connect with the Scottish diaspora and support sort of charitable and areas within Scotland and give back. So amazing experience, and from that learning went on to work with another lady and start a venture which was inventing a board game on Scotland. It was called Scottish Quest, and that for me was my first real venture into working in a startup. I mean, that had the highs and the lows that I see people going through now. You know, I remember rocking up to the warehouse in San Francisco because we were promoting over again in the States, having a shipment in from China for the board games and finding that they were all faulty, and having to send it all back, and staying up throughout the night to write the 2,400 questions that we did for the board game, and standing in shopping centres at Christmas selling it. So all those kind of sort of life experiences that come with living in the world of entrepreneurship. So that was a real eye-opener for me. It's still going today, but ultimately it was never going to be the big success in terms of paying salaries and things. So went on to work with a group called Connect Scotland here. That was about 2005, and that really got me into the world of investment. So it was all about helping tech companies to seek investment in Scotland. And one of the big things we did was a tech tour, and we brought European investors from across the the whole of Europe and put them in front of a number of startups in that tech arena. So again, similar world, but different sort of approach to it. And then went on in 2009 to work on the Gathering, which was the big clan gathering down in Holyrood Park. Highs and lows there, again, great event, but just some challenges around the project management, and I would say, was probably my first experience of failure. So it was a really tough time coming out the back of that. And went on to work in various different areas really of tourism, startup and consultancy and things at that point, and started to look at where did I want to go and what did I want to do with that sort of eclectic background. And you don't necessarily fit. You don't have, I'm not a lawyer, or I'm not a doctor, or I'm not a marketeer. I've kind of got this eclectic background. My friends always used to joke about Lucy Rose would never have the normal job. There would always be something weird about what she did. So it was kind of, so I went through a real period of self-development at that point, and then trained as a coach, and put myself through that. And it was really sort of coming out the other side of that training that I got wind of Entrepreneurial Spark. And that was when Jim Duffy had come up with the concept at that point. And that was kind of when I first heard about it. Awesome. So it's been good.
So the training that you did as a coach then, was that as a business coach?
So it was kind of a mixture of both, really, in terms of the skill set you could use for business or for life. Right. Because when you tended to work with somebody, you would work with all aspects of their life. So you could look at the different elements of it. So it was kind of a mixture, really. You've got an incredibly diverse background. Yes, it's quite eclectic.
but I suppose perfect for what you're now doing.
Exactly, right? No, very much so. So it's been interesting, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So it would be really good for people that aren't familiar with Entrepreneurial Spark if you could give us, I suppose, an overview of kind of what you are and what you do, and I suppose the whole genesis of it as well.
So it was originally, as I say, Jim Duffy's brainchild in terms of the concept and really wanting to be able to support entrepreneurs better. He'd had a massive failure with a startup that he'd worked in, and he felt there was a better way to help people start businesses. So when I came in, it was really the kind of synergy between my background of both startup but also the psychology that really worked well when we came together to be able to say, right, okay, well, what is it about an entrepreneur that we need to really help them with? And it comes down to mindset, for everybody in any area of life. It comes down to your mindset, but particularly for an entrepreneur, it's about the mindset and behaviours that you are displaying on a daily basis and that you are learning and working on. So that really led us. We started out with one space in Glasgow as an accelerator, really sort of thinking about businesses and ideas, and then evolved really into what we would call today a people accelerator. So we had about 25 companies in that first cohort in Glasgow. We were really lucky to be gifted a space by Lord Hawkey in his building, and that allowed us to then get the support of the local council, who came in to fund in early 2012, and that was us really off at that point. And we then went on to open in Ayrshire with the support of Sir Tom Hunter and the councils there. And then we ultimately went on to where we are today, but I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit later on. But really for us, it's about moving people quicker through their journey. So yes, you could sit at home and work on your business, but it's quite a lonely place. And getting that resilience and peer support of being in a space with other people and taking down, so we talk about when you come into Entrepreneurial Spark, everything is completely free. So you don't pay for anything, we don't take any equity. So we've taken out all the physical barriers. So you're not paying for Wi-Fi, you're not paying for a desk. But then the biggest thing is these barriers up here, and that's what we then needed to work on. So for us, that was development of our USP, which is entrepreneurial enablement. Okay. And that's really about essentially similar to coaching an entrepreneur. And it's saying, well, what is standing in the way? What can we do? How can we move you on? How can we join the dots, in terms of linkages and connections? But where is it? Is it fear? What is it? That's really the sort of main element.
And what's the most common themes that come out of that?
It's definitely got to be confidence.
Yeah.
It's confidence to take that step. It's confidence to ask that question, ask that person, thinking big enough. And so a lot of it will come down to fear, because it's fear of the unknown, it's fear of what somebody might say, it's fear of what people might think. 9 times out of 10, that the biggest thing blocking a business moving forward is the entrepreneur running it.
Without a doubt.
It's helping them to move through that period.
I can kind of relate to the whole idea of the resistance, if you like.
Very much.
It's tough. So, but I mean, how do you then go about teaching people confidence? Yeah,
it's an interesting one. I think so I would say I talk that we are not about education, we're more about facilitation and enablement. Okay. So it's really about holding up the mirror to people and asking them the right questions. So the team don't give people the answers. We're not here to tell you how to run your business. That's not our role, and you wouldn't want that. That wouldn't help. So it's really about asking you the things that make you think. And you can sit with an entrepreneur and you can almost have that sort of breakthrough moment when you see them going, oh God, that's it, and you've just helped them overcome that sort of barrier, or by making them think about it in a different way, because you're able to have that bird's eye view, because you're not in it like they are. So you're helping them to kind of zoom out a wee bit and have that. And I think things like, so one of the big things we focus on is pitching. And I would say we kind of introduced that to Scotland 5 years ago when we brought it back, certainly from the US, in terms of really making it an okay thing to do. We were a bit rah, people would say in the beginning, a bit kind of, I'm great, stand up and talk about yourself very confidently. But that's really important, being able to articulate your business idea, who you are, being authentic is really important, and just to start that conversation. So one of the things we do is get people to work on their 60-second pitch. So you can have people at the beginning of the 6-month accelerator who cannot stand up in front of that room of 40 people and communicate at all, and they're really nervous and they're shaking, and by the end of the 6 months they're standing up in front of 200 people and just rocking it. And that's teaching confidence. Because you've helped them to get the skills to be able to work on something, and you've put things in like wee competitions or a wee bit of peer pressure along the way and peer support to encourage them to continue to do that. And it's a safe space. So nobody's judging you, nobody's laughing at you if you get it wrong. You're all in the same boat together, and that's a really important part of it.
Definitely. Yeah, that sounds great. Excellent. So your role as CEO is actually Chief Entrepreneurial
Entrepreneuring
Officer.
Yes,
okay.
We've trademarked entrepreneuring.
Yes, I know. When did it become a verb?
Yes.
Like entrepreneuring.
Yeah, so we really wanted to encapsulate the idea that it's all about doing. So our hashtag is Go Do, and entrepreneurship is studying. So, yes, that's great, you can go and study at university, but really you're going to learn by doing. That's the reality of it. So we really believe that everybody should be entrepreneuring all the time, in all walks of life, because it's really just about finding out more things, learning, teaching yourself, and taking that next step to learn, well, what do I need to do now? So that was really where it came from.
You're very cool. I like it.
We'll have to trademark a word.
And so what does your specific role kind of entail at the moment then?
Yeah. So we have the 12 locations at this moment in time. We'll have our 13th in London in August. So my role is to very much oversee the growth of the business as we move into really what is our next phase. We are making some fairly significant changes at the moment, and I described it recently to somebody as we're growing up. We've 5 years we've been starting up, and have learned so much along that way, and still very much are. But we probably had a kind of one-size-fits-all approach before. And what we're seeing now is we've gone into other cities, is that people are coming in at a much later stage. So people are coming in who are turning over 1.5 million.
Wow.
So we need to say, well, how do we meet their needs as well as the needs of someone who's walking in the door with an idea? So that's allowed us to say, right, let's tweak our model. So we're looking at probably having about 4 different stages now in our model. So overseeing that, making sure that we retain our world-class team, and making sure that we're always upskilling them. For me, that's pretty much my number one priority, and is looking after the team and the talent that we have in-house. And another big part of my role as CEO is working with our stakeholders and our partners. So we obviously have a huge partner in the sense of Royal Bank of Scotland. So a big role is working with them.
Because you have partnerships with RBS NatWest, KPMG and Dell, I believe. How did you go about forging them in the beginning?
Yeah, so it was interesting. We were at a sort of 3-year point, Jim and myself, and we were kind of thinking about what's next, as entrepreneurs do, and where do we go now. And we'd had a relationship with Royal Bank of Scotland since 2012, when they'd given us sponsorship money that we'd given out to the entrepreneurs as prizes. But they actually then approached us and said, we've looked around the whole of the world in terms of accelerators and what is out there, and we'd really love to partner with you to scale across the UK. The big thing for them is their 2020 vision of increasing customer trust and advocacy. So one of the things they want to do is to get closer to entrepreneurs, understand them better, and really become the bank for entrepreneurs. So one way to achieve this was to partner with a business accelerator. So we spent a while working out what that looked like, and signed a contract with them in late 2014 to open 10 locations. At the time, I think it was 8, but then all of a sudden we accelerated the accelerator and added a few more in, as you do.
Yes.
So that was good. And then they have really strong relationships with the likes of KPMG and Dell EMC, and they do a lot of work with them. So we were looking around for what would be the right partnerships from an accountancy perspective, a tech perspective, and we also have Pinsent Masons and Harper McLeod as well from a law perspective. So it was really then about working out with any partnership, what does both sides need from the relationship. So again, it was talking through those and working that out that led us to then say, right, okay, let's give this a shot.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, now I read recently that you have plans to create this into a sort of £20 million social enterprise over the next, I think, sort of 5 years. And I believe that the contract with RBS is a rolling 5 years,
That's right.
Is that right?
Yep.
So if it's a free business accelerator,
Great question.
What's the sort of revenue model then?
Yeah, so for me, we are in a really privileged position to have a 5-year rolling contract with a major corporate, and it's great working with Royal Bank of Scotland, but I wouldn't be an entrepreneur if I didn't think about how I make this business sustainable. So things can change for them at any point, as we've seen, and we can't 100% rely on that being there. So I need to say, right, how do we make Entrepreneurial Spark sustainable? And not essentially just have the one partnership as such, albeit that's our core business. So one of there's a couple of areas that we're looking at. One of them we just trialled in Highlands and Islands last year, and that was a virtual model. So we did our sort of main events across 3-month period at the beginning, the middle and the end, and then we enabled the companies by Skype. So rather than being in a physical space, because if you open a hatchery in Inverness, people are not going to travel from Shetland every day, but you still want to be able to support them. So we thought, how do you best support that geography? So this was really through virtual enablement and some face-to-face support. So that was backed by Highlands and Islands Enterprise and the Scottish Government, as well as Harper McLeod, and obviously with our Royal Bank of Scotland. So that was really, really interesting, a massive success. Interestingly, one of the things you talked about before in terms of confidence, it was something like 98% of the people on that programme increased their confidence during that. So, and we measured that at the beginning and the end. So it was a real sort of tangible, measurable that we had. So it was great to be able to show that, as well as increasing investment and turnover and jobs in the area. So that's one of the areas that we can think about. So albeit we have the physical locations, which people can come into for free, we'll go out to other areas around the country and offer the virtual model, but that would be paid for. So it might be a local authority, or we're talking to the Welsh Government. It could be that kind of area. So it's just thinking about who needs what support in different areas. The second thing really is around we're working with Royal Bank of Scotland in terms of their staff and upskilling their teams in entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship. So that's worked really well. We worked with 2,500 of them last year, and we're going to be doing the same this year. So we thought about, well, how do we take that out to other corporates or SMEs? So we're going to commercialise what is the Entrepreneurial Development Academy this year. So we're going to look at doing that. The other thing that is very early stage for us is about creating an entrepreneuring network. So we have 12 locations across the UK, but actually I'd love to be able to link that all up, as well as incorporate our virtual support and say, right, how can you offer something that allows people to have that both peer-to-peer support, but also enablement support across the country. And that also allows us to go global as well, because you could offer that across the world, basically. So that's another revenue stream that we're looking at this moment in time.
So is that like a social network, a sort of paid?
It's a similar type concept, probably have a sort of subscription model along that way. But as I say, it's in the early stages at the moment, but that's definitely part of the vision as we move forward.
Excellent. Cool.
Yes,
Very good.
Few options.
Definitely. So what's the kind of the longer term vision, of beyond that? Like what's the big goal?
The big goal, yes. So really in terms of, it's definitely creating sustainability, but whilst reaching as many entrepreneurs as we possibly can, and intrapreneurs, very much so. I would love to reach millions of people globally in terms of our enablement and being able to support them to succeed in business, or equally find out that that's not the right route for them as well. So really that long-term vision is about reaching, as I say, millions of entrepreneurs and people worldwide with what we do.
Wow. Okay, I like it. Big thinking.
Yes, exactly.
So what would you say are some of the biggest success stories to have come out of Entrepreneurial Spark?
So we've got a few then in terms of successes that we've worked with. I think a few that are well known in Scotland would be Molesey, Callie Russell, who worked with us, so who's doing great guns. Really good, his social shopping app. I think it was listed, I saw it alongside
it was in Forbes list, and it was in
something else. And they were listed at Christmas,
that's right.
Alongside Deliveroo and things like that.
In terms of
that's
right.
Apps.
In the App Store,
Brilliant. So he's doing really, really well. Leah Hutchison from Appointed, again, just signed a multi-million-pound deal at the end of last year. Is doing great. And I remember her, she was one of our first cohorts into Glasgow, actually, working closely with her. And that was a great one. And then the other one that springs to mind, because we just heard from him the other day, was Beer 52. So it's the craft beer subscription. So that is, again, I think, I know is doing excellently. So, so some really great ones coming out. And again, same across the UK as we grow. There's some fairly big successes happening. We have Elf on the Shelf that we work with down in Milton Keynes.
Okay.
I'm like you, I did the Who's Elf on the Shelf when I first heard of it, but it's massive at Christmas in terms of having this elf that follows people around and people do crazy things with it. So
Really?
so they're doing really, really well as well. So there's lots of stuff bubbling away at the moment. Lots of investments happening as well.
That's brilliant. Yeah. It keeps you busy.
It certainly does.
Yeah. So I'm interested to hear your views a little bit on, I suppose, entrepreneurship specifically.
Yep.
I don't know. Do you think there's been a growth in the number of entrepreneurs or the sort of popularity of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's just been this kind of growth in, I suppose, what we would call kind of the gig economy, and really about people not having a career in one thing for the rest of their lives. They maybe have 3 different jobs and maybe not always classing themselves as an entrepreneur, but actually they are, because they're doing different things and getting income from different areas and essentially running their own business. But I think there's probably a difference, and I would say there's difference for us in terms of who we work with. So there's somebody who maybe wants to be self-employed and run a lifestyle business, which is great. I mean, you would still class them as an entrepreneur, but the people that we work with are the ones who are looking to grow and scale their businesses and have the ambition to take it globally potentially and grow something fairly big, and that's probably the difference, albeit you see loads of different ages and stages of businesses through what we do, and we support a whole different range. But I think it's definitely becoming more of a career choice now. So when you came out of university, it wasn't really the done thing, whereas now it very much is. As I say, it's taught a lot, and there's a lot of support for entrepreneurs, and there's a lot more known and talked about in terms of, if you look at the sharing economy with your Airbnbs of the world, people know that as a startup. Your Skyscanners, albeit 14 years later, they did a fantastic exit. They talk about it as being a startup, and people know that. So it's definitely something that is becoming more and more commonplace and more accepted as well.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really good thing. And you look at corporates are now absolutely embracing entrepreneurs to help solve their problems.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of ideas are coming from. And a lot of people we see are leaving corporates to start businesses where they've recognised a pain point in the corporate.
Yeah, it's funny that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of almost consultancy type.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So they'll see, wait a minute, I think I can solve that problem. So they'll go off and do it, and it's much easier for you to do that with a small team, agile and lean, than it is with tens of thousands of people on a big beast. So it's but marrying the two together can have fantastic results.
Yeah. And so, because we were kind of speaking about this a little bit before we started, what do you think are some of the threats to corporates with the increasing number of entrepreneurs?
I think the threats is, as we mentioned there, is their speed. So they're not able to move anywhere near as fast as you can do when you're in a startup. So I think that's a real challenge. I think there's a lot of legacy issues. So there's a lot of things that are implemented that they try to change, but is quite difficult to do. I think there's a mindset. I think, albeit there's a lot of corporates that are changing, there is a lot of still kind of corporates work on, you get paid by the hour, it's all about how much you bring in, doesn't really allow for a huge amount of innovation. And I think, then the innovation leaves. People get stifled. If they're not allowed to innovate or be entrepreneurs within the business, then they'll just go off and do it themselves. Our average age at Entrepreneurial Spark is 38. So the likelihood is people have had, a career in some area like that, and then have said, wait a minute, I'm off to do something different. So I think there's definitely a massive opportunity as well as a threat for corporates. I think they have to recognise their role and to continually to disrupt and think about, could we do this a different way, as well as embracing the ideas that are coming out from entrepreneurs.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Good answer. Good answer.
Good.
This is something that actually has come up in the past, and I'm not 100% clear. How do you personally define the word entrepreneur?
Do you know what? It's funny you should say that, because I really hate the word.
Do you really?
Yeah, I'm not
Unbelievable.
a fan at all. I really don't like it. I think it's got a bit of a stigma to it. I think people misuse it. I suppose if you were to say it in its simplest form, it's anybody who is looking to create something out of either an opportunity that they've seen or a pain point that they've experienced, and want to make a business out of it, or want to change something in the world, a social change, or so like I say, I'm not a big fan, because I think there's lots of different definitions and ways that people use it. But ultimately, I think if you have that desire to do something, then you should absolutely do it, and to create something different. I think I learned way back when about cocktail entrepreneurs, so people who go to cocktail parties and have all these amazing ideas and they want to talk about them with everybody and they're so good, but they'll never do anything about them. So an entrepreneur is actually somebody who will execute and will actually make that idea a reality. And there's a lot of wannabes.
Entrepreneurs.
Oh yeah.
Jeez.
We have a lot of people who are professional pitchers, who we see, who just go and win pitch competitions because they're great at going out and pitching, but they actually have done bugger all in the background. But the panel think, that's amazing, Yeah, but they can't execute at all. So it's actually being able to make that idea become something that is a viable business. That's what really an entrepreneur is. Yeah,
and so what are the character traits then that you think make that person?
Persistence, 100%. Yeah, you're going to have to take knockbacks. You're going to have really difficult times. That resilience went through the highs and the lows, and absolutely being forensic about your customer and understanding who they are and constantly revisiting them, not just saying, well, I've got a customer base, they must be happy, just really always going back and talking to them and refining your product constantly all the time. So it takes a lot of guts, absolutely no doubt. You've done it yourself in terms of jumping out of a job. And it does, to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make this happen. So you definitely have to be able to deal with the highs and lows and have the growth mindset to be able to think, okay, that didn't work, so how do I need to do this differently? And if somebody's told you no 20 times, just keep going. If your customers are telling you, or your potential customers are telling you no, then learn from that, but keep knocking on the doors that you need to knock on to get that win.
I think a lot of the time it's reframing the idea of failure.
Oh, completely.
That failure is not a negative thing. It's really just a feedback mechanism.
Oh, completely. Yeah. No, I think it's a great thing to get that. And you should really learn from it. If somebody says that was crap, or it's like, well, what was that you didn't like, or we're always speaking to our customers, Entrepreneurial Spark, to really understand, well, what are we doing right? What could we do better? Because it's really important to know that and accept. One of the big things some people like to say shy away from failure. I'm a big believer in absolutely talking about them. We're about to launch our new website, and one of the things I saw when I was out in Colorado about 5 years ago, I went to Boulder to the Tech Stars, and there's a sort of accelerator. So we bit Big Brother accelerator, actually. We'd put people in a house together. But it's called the Unreasonable Institute, and one thing they have on their website is their failures. And I think that's great. Absolutely embrace them and say, do you know what? We did this wrong. So I said that's what I want on our website, is to say, you know, but we made this mistake, we made that mistake, because we are a startup within Entrepreneurial Spark. You know, we are a role model. So we have to walk the talk, you know, very much so. And we, you know, we've scaled from, you know, I think it was 7 people back in 2012 to a team now of 45, you know, very, very rapidly. So we're going through this all at the same time as working with all these other entrepreneurs. So it's great to be able to empathize with them.
Yes.
You know, which is really important.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think there's a lot that can be learned from the American way of doing things.
Very much so. Yeah.
Because I've had a few guests who've spoken about Silicon Valley, or certainly have been out there, and there's no procrastination, or there's no real kind of fear of failing.
Yes.
It's just, we're just doing this.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. And often they won't even look at people unless they've had a couple of failures, you know, because they want you to have been through that experience and been resilient to be able to deal with it and pick yourself up and say, right, well, what's next, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there is definitely a lot that can be learned.
Good stuff. What are your thoughts on Scotland as an entrepreneurial ecosystem?
I think we've definitely grown a really good one over the last sort of 5 years as we've sort of been in it. I think one of the things we would recognise that we have had an impact on is getting people to raise their game. So they talk about a rising tide floats many boats. You know, ultimately we came in and we were pretty disruptive. We challenged a lot of people in terms of their support and how they might be able to do things better. And I think we've seen that. You know, I'm not saying that's testament to us, but it certainly has had an impact. So you look at something like the Scottish Edge, which was again an idea from Jim Duffy, in terms of kicking that off, and that's been a great thing for so many businesses across Scotland. So I think we've really improved as it's become, as we talked about before, more and more prevalent, and something that is very much a career choice. You know, it's something that people are doing more and more regularly. So it's therefore got more and more support. I think probably a wee bit spoilt in Scotland. So, you know, having been across the rest of the UK, there isn't anywhere near the same support as there is here in Scotland, you know, particularly public sector support, which is really, you know, really good. Sometimes edges into the tick box exercise, I would say, but there's also some great support out there. So there is things like, you know, Business Gateway in terms of mass market support, right through to, as I said, the Scottish Edge, which is really kind of focused. And I think things like the Scottish Government's Can Do programme, which is really trying to bring everybody together in terms of entrepreneurship and how we can support entrepreneurs as a collective, is really important. I think that collaboration really helps, because for the entrepreneur it's quite a confusing landscape. You know, where do I go, who do I get support from at the right time? I think we've not got there yet, but it's definitely improving, I would say. And I think it's a mindset thing. So if we talk about America, they are not scared of, I am great, this is my business, I am really good at this, I'm going to do an amazing job, I'm going to be really successful. Here we're a wee bit more kind of, I shouldn't really talk about that, I'm doing quite well, should I, you know, a bit of the tall poppy syndrome. And I think that has held people back. And similarly, the ability to think big. I think that's a confidence thing again, but it's that kind of, you know, I can grow a global business, you know, or even I can open 20 retail shops, not just think I'm going to open 2, you know, or should I be going for 20 grand? No, actually, you should be going for 200 grand, you know? So it's about like just reframing that and helping people to think bigger. And I think we've suffered definitely from that in Scotland over the years.
Yeah, we tend to agree with you there. Yeah, but I think it is improving.
Oh, massively, massively, definitely. Yeah, it's great. I mean, if you look at somewhere like Edinburgh, the support for entrepreneurs is second to none. It's phenomenal.
I was going to ask you about Edinburgh actually.
Yeah.
Because obviously the show is, Edinburgh based.
Yes.
And and towards the later half of 2016, I believe it won an award as most entrepreneurial city in the UK.
The UK.
Incredible.
Yeah. No, it was brilliant. It really was. And I think I talked about that, and it was a Guardian article with the reporter, and it was talking about likening themselves to Boston, and Boston sees itself as an incubator, and Jim Galloway we worked with at the local council, that was very much his ambition, and they've worked really hard on that, you know, and supported us at the beginning, which was fantastic. And I think, as I say, there's still a way to go in terms of making sure everybody's talking to each other and helping. The entrepreneur should always be at the heart of everything we do, every decision we make. And certainly that's our ethos at Entrepreneurial Spark. So it's not about what boxes I tick or who's got the best support or they're my client. It's just about making sure that they understand where they need to go at the right time for the right support.
Yeah. And is there anything that has that sort of resources?
So certainly that was the initial, when we were initially working with the council, that was the idea, to build that website. I'm not entirely sure where it is today, but the difficulty with something like that is it changes so often, and to be able to upkeep something that has all that information on it is quite difficult. So I appreciate that's a challenge, but I think I suppose for an entrepreneur, it's just being able to go out and ask people and being able to get the right support at the right time.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of your own personal entrepreneurial journey,
yes,
is there anything that you would have done differently?
I'd have done differently. Probably no. I'm a great believer in each step of your life leads you to where you are today, and it all happens for a reason. So I probably wouldn't have done anything differently, albeit I probably suffered in the early days from maybe not saying what I thought as much as I probably should. I believe I have a really good gut feel for people or situations, but sometimes I'll kind of hang back a wee bit, or have done previously.
Because I read, I honestly can't remember what the exact phrase was, but it was someone saying that you were some sort of no sniper.
Yeah, that was it, the silent assassin.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because you how do I phrase this? You wouldn't shy away from saying no with a smile on your face.
Exactly. That's it, yeah. No, I'm very...
Is that a learnt skill then?
Oh, very much so, yeah. I would say that's definitely been honed over the years in terms of this focus. I know that you need to absolutely focus to get to where you want to be. And that means that not saying yes to every single opportunity and not saying yes to every single invitation that you get. You know, ultimately, you are the only person who's going to look after you, and you're the only person who's going to create your own future. So you have to make decisions and choices as you go through every step, and some of them will be about, you know, unfortunately that's not right at this moment in time, or, you know, I'm going to choose who I spend my time with. You know, there's people in your life, you always talk about the kind of drains or the radiators. So I very much make a huge amount of time for my family and friends, because they are most important people in my life. But you choose who you want to spend your time with.
Love your family, choose your friends.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's people that you recognise drain you both professionally and personally, and you have to say, well, that's not where I'm going to go. No, that's not what I'm going to do. So that's one of the things that I've definitely learned over the years. Is about how to spend my time, what to say yes and no to, and to speak up when I know that something's not right.
Yeah, those are tough things.
Yeah, they are really difficult. Yeah, having difficult conversations is one of the things I'm a great believer in. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it at all, but I'm a big TED talker. I love TED Talks. They inspire a lot of the decisions I make and the things I do.
Is that right?
Yeah, just kind of trigger wee things, and I think, oh, how's that relevant to my life or to work? And And one of them I watched recently was about emotional nakedness, and basically just about having those real hard-hitting conversations with people in your life that are really, really important to have, you know, and really because miscommunication is such a fundamental thing that leads to so many arguments, so many challenges, whereas if you just talked about what did you really mean when you said that, you know, and be able to have those honest conversations and feed back to people as well. So in Entrepreneurial Spark, we talk about hot feedback. And that's really about, you know, you could have maybe done something differently during that conversation, or that was brilliant when you said that, you know, really kind of talking to people about the way they behaved, because I want my team to be absolutely awesome. And if you don't help them to grow, then they won't be, you know, so it's a really important part of life.
Yeah. Excellent. Really good. It's a great insight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's you just really, you know, another great TED talk, I don't know if you've ever seen, is Super Chickens, Margaret Heffernan. It's fantastic, and just really about how in a lot of workplaces people are always trying to kill off other people, dare I say it, to get to the top.
Ouch.
You know, and whereas that's absolutely not the mentality. It should be about we're all in this together.
Yeah.
You know, Entrepreneurial Spark, we talk about being in the canoe, rowing in the same direction. If somebody starts to row in the wrong direction, we're going to need to deal with that and help to work out why is that happening. So you're absolutely there for each other. You know, you're not trying to get ahead. It's a supportive and collaborative environment.
Yeah, it's a great message. I like it.
Good
Stuff. So if you hadn't co-founded Entrepreneurial Spark, what do you think you would be doing?
So for me, my purpose is all about helping people. And
I was about to ask you your purpose as well, so that's ideal.
It's good, yeah, it is. And you know, that for me, supporting, encouraging, instilling confidence, helping people to make their dreams a reality, whatever that might look like, is very much what motivates and drives me. So if it wasn't working with entrepreneurs, it might be working with children, or it might be working, I don't know, just with the general public to help you to make your dreams come true, basically, you know, and I mean that in the sense of helping you to do it. I'm not saying I'm going to hand you, you know, £1 million and there you go. It's really about how can I help you to find your own purpose. I feel very lucky that I have found something that is what I would call my flow, you know, something that I love. I don't see as a job, you know, I absolutely love it, and it's the reason that I get up every day to work and support entrepreneurs across the UK. So to be able to help somebody else achieve that would be amazing. So it would be in some walk of life like that.
Nice. This is maybe a bit of a tricky question. You kind of alluded to it there, but what do you think other people can do to align themselves with a purpose or find their own purpose?
So there's got to be a certain amount of soul searching. So we talked earlier about personal development. I think we've both been through that sort of period, and you find yourself on this kind of like roller coaster of one thing leads you to another thing, leads you to another thing, leads you to another thing, and it's going through that process of just thinking about what is it I like doing, and then it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to read something about that, or what is it I need to change in me, or to look at in me in terms of my own kind of awareness of who I am and what makes me tick and what makes me happy. That really helps you to uncover, therefore, what does that mean I need to be doing every day, you know? So you've got to take the time to be self-aware and say, well, what is that? Because it's personal to everybody, but you've got to ask yourself some questions along the way that gets you to that point of knowing what that is for you, and then thinking about, well, what does that look like in a day-to-day world? You know, is it that I'm going to start my own business, or is it that I'm going to go and work for a charity, or is it that I want to, go and work for a large corporate. Everybody will find a different thing, but you have to know you first.
Yeah.
It's all about being comfortable in your own skin. I don't think some people will do, but I feel like until you get to your early 30s, you don't really it's like that sort of, I don't know, the 28, I watch my brother going through it right now, the kind of 28 to 35 period where you kind of ask those questions of yourself, but you've got to be open to it. You've got to really want to be able to do that and understand that.
Do you think it's harder for younger people to find that?
I think you just maybe don't have enough life experience, maybe, and that's where it comes down to. I would just say to anybody at that stage, just try as many different things as you can. Don't be kind of like, oh gosh, I must go to uni and then I must get a job and I must stay in it. It's like just experience different things, the world, and just kind of get to know yourself. Yeah. I think that's so important. Yeah. And don't do anything for anybody else, and I mean that from don't feel you have to project anything. Yes. Or be somebody that you're not. Yeah. And that's really important as well.
Yeah, it's very important. Yep, definitely. Good stuff.
Good.
So how would you describe your own personal values?
So, hard work. I'm a big believer in personal responsibility, so if people blame other people, I think you just have to look inside, really. You can deflect the blame, and that would be easy to do, but you have to also say, well, why didn't that happen? Or people who say, well, I didn't have any option. Well, you do. You have a choice. Yes. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Or I didn't have any time to do that. Well, yes, you did, because you've got the same amount of hours in a week as everybody else. You've chosen to use it to do something different. So, it's kind of excuses like that are slightly frustrating. And don't get me wrong, we all fall into it. And you hear yourself saying it. It's that one where people say to you, how are things? Oh, busy. I'm just like, well, that's just like... Yeah. Such a mundane phrase, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like, well, what are you actually spending your time on? What are your priorities and things? So, so for me, hard work, really important. Trust, big thing. So although I think I'm very good at gut instincts, I would say that I tend to trust people pretty implicitly, and therefore, if that trust gets broken, I find that quite a challenge. So that's kind of a difficult. Obvious one is going to be support, is making sure that people are supported. Like I say, family and friends, my team, really, really important for me, feeling that they've got the right support to do what they want to do in life. And other one would probably be sort of excellence in terms of striving to provide a really great service. I feel very privileged to be in the role that I'm in, and I feel very much an obligation to serve my team and the entrepreneurs that we work with and give them the best that we possibly can do. So I'm not a perfectionist.
I was literally going to say this. I was going to say excellence over perfectionism. I've made that mistake before.
So I would say I'm all about the 80-20 rule.
Is it a Pareto principle?
I'm very much about done is better than perfect.
I like it.
Yeah, totally. So I'm okay with kind of just start something, just give it a go, just try it out. Don't get too worried about kind of the consequences. I think we talk about as a phrase we learned from Sir Tom Hunter, which is no resets. So you can bugger up a couple, one time, but just don't make the same mistake again. So that would be, so I have high expectations, but at the same time, also I'm totally up for people giving something a go. Because I like the idea that they're saying, well, that's not quite working, so let's try this. It might not work, but that's okay. I'm right with that.
Good stuff. This is a big question, but what would you like your legacy to be?
Oh gosh, that's a big question. So if I go back to the vision in terms of reaching millions of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs across the globe, I would love to be able to have created and continued to have developed something that allows that to happen. So to be able to know that the enablement that we are supporting entrepreneurs with and the building of the confidence is very much out there and happening today as kind of a given, you know. So maybe it's like you don't go to your GP, you go to your local Entrepreneurial Spark enabler.
Yeah, probably get more out of that anyway.
Exactly, yeah.
Cool. I've got a few questions for you around kind of success type questions as well. So how do you define success?
So this is, again, an interesting one because I believe it's personal to each person, because success can look like just having done a great deal that you wanted to do in your business, or it can look like exiting for, a Skyscanner, exiting for billions. So it depends on your own personal aspirations, really, as to what success is. And I think it changes throughout your life as well. I think your priorities change, and what you deem as success changes as you learn more. Yeah. So I don't think there's a definition in the world that I work in to say, well, they're definitely really successful and they're definitely not. Albeit, because like I say, if we talk about fail fast and fail cheap, so entrepreneurs can come in and we're not charging them anything to just start a business. And if they work out after 3 months that there is nothing there, that's brilliant. That's a success. Because they haven't invested £50,000 building something that nobody wants in 10 years of their life, Yeah. Or they've worked out that being an entrepreneur is bloody hard work.
Yes.
So they're going to go and do something different. And that's also a success, So it's very personal.
Yeah. I suppose it's all relative as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It really just depends on what goals you've set yourself as to whether you feel you've succeeded.
Who or what inspires you?
So the people I'm surrounded by inspire me in terms of both my team and their dedication to working with entrepreneurs. And I know that might sound cheesy, but just to have people with such an amazing growth mindset, wanting to develop all the time. Somebody sent me an email yesterday about another member of the team, and it just said, such and such, by the way, is fantastic. And she just said, he did this, he gave me this bit of feedback about me after a call we had, and, it just made me feel so great, and I've learned something. That being able to do that for each other is totally inspirational. And then for me, it's the entrepreneurs. So it's like yourself, you jump off, you had a salary coming in every month, and now you don't. That is inspirational, because you've taken a massive risk. But do you know what? You were brave enough to know that you weren't in the right place. Yeah. So you made a change, and that for me is inspiration.
Oh, I'll take that as a compliment.
Yes, definitely. It is. It's brilliant.
Thank you very much. What would you say is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
So this is one that stayed with me since I was a teenager. So I had a teacher, which is often, I think, people's story in life. You have a teacher who's maybe been traumatically awful, or a teacher who's been absolutely brilliant. I can all relate to that. For me, it was my modern studies teacher, Mrs. Brown, and when we left 6 years, she gave me a little box that sits by my bed today. And inside she'd written a quote that said, "Life is not a dress rehearsal." And that's definitely the best advice that I've been given in terms of you're only here once. So absolutely make the most of it. Do what you love doing and be with the people that you love being with.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. If you had the opportunity to speak to the 20-year-old you, what would you say?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. It would be get as many experiences in life as you possibly can.
Yeah.
I suppose reflecting on the question we talked about earlier in terms of speaking up, I would probably say, speak up more, voice your thoughts more. But at the same time, again, I've lived this path to be where I am today, and it's been amazing. So I'm quite happy with the journey I've been on.
Yeah. Nice. If you could change anything in the world, what would it be and why?
Oh, God. That's such a difficult question.
I won't hold you to it.
I know, God, wow. I mean, religion. It's got to be the one for me, that they're just, I don't know if I was, sit here and say that if there wasn't any religion, we would be in a better place than we are today. I don't know, but I do feel like it's the root cause of so many problems that we are suffering from. So reshape religion, reimagine religion.
Jeez. Okay, there's a potential entrepreneurship problem to solve.
Yeah, exactly.
To try and think how to make money out of that.
I know, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, I do think there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah.
It's a really good answer.
Yeah, it's difficult one. I don't know where you go. I know there's the Jedi religion that is currently being formed, and maybe that's the answer.
Maybe, yeah.
We'll all just become Jedi masters, and everything will be fine. The Force is with you.
Yeah, perfect.
But yeah, I don't know what the answer to that is, but I definitely would like to reimagine it and reshape it.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Lucy Rose, it's been a true pleasure speaking to you. I've immensely enjoyed it. I think everything that you're doing is absolutely phenomenal. Again, on your part, massively inspirational.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you change the lives of millions of people.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for taking the time to watch Inspired Edinburgh. If you enjoyed watching this video, I'd really appreciate if you could like and share it. You can also sign up to our mailing list and social media channels using the details coming up on your screen now. If you have any feedback or suggestions, please feel free to comment. Until next time, reconnect with your purpose and inspire others.